Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a story so ancient, so utterly primordial, that it predates even the concept of a decent coffee shop. Imagine, if you will, standing on a planet so young, so freshly spun from the cosmic loom, that the very idea of a cloud, let alone one that weeps liquid, simply doesn't exist. You're baking under a sun that knows no filter, no atmospheric veil, just raw, unfiltered solar fury. The air shimmers not with humidity, but with the sheer intensity of heat, and the ground beneath your bare, and probably quickly blistering feet is as parched and cracked as an ancient pottery shard. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in this world without a very large, very cold, very divine beverage. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself transported, not just back in time, but back to a time before time had properly settled into its groove, when the cosmos itself was still stretching its limbs, fresh from the grand cosmic yawn of creation. This isn't just a dry world. It's a world that doesn't even comprehend the concept of wetness from above. The sky stretches endlessly above you, a uniform, piercing blue, so utterly devoid of anything resembling a cloud that the very notion would strike you as absurd. There are no wisps, no fluffy cumulus, no brooding nimbus. It's just sky and sun. Always the sun. It beats down with an unyielding, almost aggressive intensity, painting the landscape in stark, high-contrast shadows and blinding light. Think about our world today. You wake up, you check the weather app, you might grumble about the humidity or the unexpected downpour that ruins your hair. But in this nascent universe, such concerns are as alien as trying to explain Wi-Fi to a trilobite. The atmosphere, while present, is thin, perhaps a bit hazy with primordial dust, but it's a dry haze, not one pregnant with moisture. You inhale, and the air is like powdered rock, warm and still, carrying only the faint, metallic scent of newly formed minerals and the distant, low rumble of geological shifts. There's no earthy smell of damp soil, no fresh scent of ozone after a storm, because there are no storms. There's just a vast, silent, sun-baked existence. Imagine a desert so absolute, so utterly without a single drop of historical precipitation, that even the concept of an oasis is fantastical. The ground beneath your feet is a canvas of ochre, rust, and burnt sienna, cracked and fissured like ancient pottery left too long in a kiln. Dust devils might occasionally spin across the desolate plains, miniature cyclones of fine grit, but they offer no relief, only a temporary blurring of the harsh horizon. There are no rivers carving their paths through the land, no lakes shimmering under the sun, only perhaps deep, dark chasms where molten rock still glows, or vast, dry basins that hint at ancient, long-evaporated seas that existed before the world truly began to cool. Historians still argue whether the earliest bodies of water on Earth were truly vast oceans or merely scattered, isolated pools of condensed vapor. You look around, and the landscape is one of stark, raw beauty, but also of profound emptiness. There are no lush forests, no fields of swaying grain, no vibrant meadows dotted with wildflowers. Life, if it exists at all, clings to the most protected crevices, perhaps in the deepest subterranean caves where some residual moisture might linger, or around the vents of nascent volcanoes, feeding on chemical energy. It's a microbial existence, a whisper of life, not the roaring symphony we know. You won't find anything resembling a tree, or even a bush. The very idea of something tall and green, dependent on water drawn from the sky, is entirely foreign. It's like trying to imagine a fish without water, nonsensical in this context. The silence is profound, broken only by the occasional groan of the earth as it continues to settle, or the whisper of the hot, dry wind. There are no birdsong, no chirping insects, no rustling leaves. The soundscape is as barren as the visual one. You might even find yourself straining to hear something, anything, that suggests life, but you'll be met with an almost unnerving quiet. It's the kind of silence that makes you acutely aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat. It's a world without the gentle patter of rain on a rooftop or the comforting gurgle of a stream. It's just quiet and hot, always hot. It's like living in a giant cosmic dehydrator set to max. This primordial cosmos operates on different rules. The water that exists is bound deep within the Earth's mantle, or trapped in icy comets hurtling through the void, not swirling in vaporous clouds above. You experience a perpetually clear sky, a relentless, unblinking eye of the sun. There's no concept of a cloudy day, no need for waterproof clothing, no fear of a sudden downpour. The very vocabulary for such phenomena doesn't exist. If you tried to explain what rain was to a nascent deity or an early single-celled organism, they'd probably just blink at you. You mean, the sky is bleeding? They might wonder, utterly confused. And you like it? This particular era, often referred to by geologists as the Hadean Eon, was indeed characterized by extreme conditions. It was a time of intense volcanic activity and frequent asteroid impacts, a truly fiery infancy for our planet. But even in this tumultuous period, the atmosphere was fundamentally different. There were no water cycles as we understand them. The planet was still forming, still outgassing, still figuring out its basic physics. The idea of water evaporating from a surface, forming clouds, and then falling back down again was as foreign as the concept of a weekend getaway. It just wasn't part of the cosmic program yet. Think about the implications. No rainbows, no puddles for children to jump in, no dewdrops clinging to spiderwebs in the morning. The world is stripped bare of these common, beautiful occurrences. If you were an early deity, looking down on this landscape, you might find it monotonous. Beautiful in its own stark way, perhaps, but certainly lacking in variety. Every day is a carbon copy of the last. Clear skies, relentless sun, unyielding dryness. It's like living in a perpetual desert without the possibility of ever reaching an oasis. And for anyone who's ever been stuck in a never-ending heat wave, you know how quickly that can wear on the soul. You'd probably start fantasizing about anything, even a rogue asteroid, just to break the monotony. One quirky tidbit about extreme dryness. Did you know there are actual organisms called xerophiles that thrive in incredibly dry environments? They're like the ultimate survivors, evolving mechanisms to cope with desiccation. But even they would find this primordial world a challenge, because it's not just dry. It's a world where the very mechanism for widespread hydration from the sky simply hasn't been invented yet. Their existence today is a testament to evolution's ingenuity, but back then, it was just dry. There wasn't even the promise of a future rain to hold on to. The sun rises and sets with unwavering precision, casting long, stark shadows that crawl across the barren landscape. Each day is a cycle of heating and cooling, but never of moistening. The air doesn't just feel dry, it feels empty of moisture. There's no humidity to cling to your skin, no stickiness, no clamminess. It's a clean, sharp dryness that leaves your throat parched and your eyes feeling gritty. You can almost hear the world itself sighing, a long, drawn-out exhalation of perpetual thirst. And in this vast, arid expanse, a young, powerful, and perhaps a little bit bored deity named Zeus is about to stumble upon a solution to a problem he didn't even realize was a problem until it became an absolute, glaring planetary inconvenience. You find yourself standing on the precipice of time, a period so ancient, so utterly unwet, that the very air shimmers with an almost painful dryness. This isn't the familiar, often soggy, earth you know. Oh no, this is the cosmos fresh from its grand, chaotic birth, and perched atop its nascent, wobbly throne is a deity who's still, shall we say, figuring things out. You're looking at young Zeus, the freshly minted king of Olympus, and let me tell you, his kingdom at this point was less majestic realm and more cosmic construction site with a very enthusiastic, but largely inexperienced foreman. Imagine him, if you will, not as the bearded, thunderbolt-wielding patriarch of countless myths, but as a supremely powerful, yet remarkably green prodigy. He just won the cosmic equivalent of a wrestling match against his tyrannical father, Cronus, freeing his siblings from their unfortunate digestive predicament. A heroic feat, absolutely, but winning a war, as anyone who's ever tried to assemble flat-pack furniture knows, is only half the battle. Now came the tricky part, ruling, and Zeus, bless his cotton socks, was learning the ropes of his immense, world-shaping power with all the grace of a toddler trying to operate a bulldozer. He had the raw, untamed might of the universe coursing through his veins, the kind of power that could spontaneously generate a new star just by him sneezing, but he hadn't quite mastered the art of finesse. His domain, this nascent world, was a testament to his early, unrefined reign. It was, to put it mildly, an arid place. Picture a landscape that stretches endlessly, bathed in a relentless, golden light that never quite softened. The sun, a blazing orb in the sky, felt less like a benevolent life-giver and more like a cosmic heat lamp cranked up to 11. You'd squint constantly, your eyes aching from the perpetual glare. The ground beneath your feet, if you were brave enough to walk it, would be cracked and dusty, a mosaic of parched earth that crumbled into fine powder with every step. There were no gentle breezes here, only hot, dry gusts that whipped up miniature dust devils, dancing across the desolate plains like restless spirits. The air itself felt thin, almost brittle, as if it might shatter if you spoke too loudly. This was a world dominated by the element of fire, and perhaps a touch of earth, but water? It was a concept as alien as a smartphone in ancient Greece. Rivers were mere indentations in the landscape, long-forgotten scars where liquid might once have flowed in a theoretical past. Lakes were shimmering mirages, tempting reflections of the harsh sky that vanished the closer you got. And the sky itself? A vast, unbroken expanse of brilliant, merciless blue, sometimes streaked with the fiery hues of nascent nebulae, but never, ever hinting at the soft, gray promise of rain. It was a perpetually sunny day, which sounds lovely on paper, but in reality, it was like living inside a giant, cosmic kiln. Zeus, in these early days, was less a king and more a celestial teenager with unlimited credit. He'd experiment with his powers, often with unintended consequences. You might see a mountain spontaneously erupt, not from geological pressure, but because Zeus, in a moment of pique, had tried to adjust its height. Or a new valley would suddenly cleave the land, a result of him testing the tensile strength of the Earth's crust. He'd try to create new creatures, sometimes magnificent, sometimes, well, let's just say some early prototypes were quickly reabsorbed into the cosmic ether, probably for the best. It was an era of divine improvisation, where every day was a new lesson in the sheer, overwhelming might of his abilities. Historians still argue whether Zeus's early, hands-on approach to creation was a deliberate strategy to understand his powers or merely the impulsive actions of a young god with an infinite toolkit and zero instruction manual. But what is clear is that he was building the world, piece by chaotic piece, through trial and error. He was a cosmic architect who hadn't quite mastered the blueprint. His lightning bolts, which would later become his signature weapon and a symbol of his authority, were in these early days more like unpredictable bursts of static electricity, often sparking off randomly when he was frustrated, or perhaps just trying to scratch an itch. You'd see a flash of raw energy across the sky, followed by a distant, ground-shaking rumble, and everyone would just sigh and think, "Oh, Zeus is having another moment." The world, in turn, adapted to this constant state of arid, sun-baked existence. Life forms, hardy and resilient, clung to existence in the shadow of rocks or burrowed deep into the dry earth, seeking any respite from the unyielding glare. Plants were sparse, mostly tough, spiky things that seemed to defy the very concept of needing moisture. They were the cosmic equivalent of succulents, but even they struggled. It was a world of muted colors, dominated by ochre, rust, and the blinding white of the sky. There was a stark, almost brutal beauty to it, but it was a beauty that longed for something more. Zeus, for all his raw power, was still learning the nuances of his environment. He was like a prodigy musician who could hit every note with incredible force, but hadn't yet learned how to play a melody. His rule was characterized by this immense, untamed energy. He could split mountains, summon winds that scoured the land, and make the very ground tremble beneath his feet, but he hadn't yet learned control. He was the undisputed king, yes, but a king whose subjects often wondered if their next cosmic experiment would be a new mountain range or just a really big crater. It's a bit like giving a supercharged rocket engine to a toddler and saying, "Here, go play responsibly. What could possibly go wrong?" One of the quirks of this era, a tidbit often overlooked in the grand sagas of Olympus, is that many of the early, lesser deities were essentially glorified cosmic groundskeepers. Their entire existence revolved around trying to tidy up after Zeus's latest learning experience. You had minor gods whose job it was to smooth out newly formed craters, or to try and coax a struggling sapling to grow in the perpetual drought. It was a thankless job, often involving a lot of sweeping dust and occasionally dodging stray bolts of divine energy. You can almost hear them grumbling, "Honestly, for an all-powerful being, he's remarkably messy." So, you see, this was the stage. A young, powerful, yet incredibly green Zeus, ruling an equally young, incredibly arid world. He had the power to shape the cosmos, but he hadn't yet understood the delicate balance required to truly nurture it. He was the king of chaos, not by malicious intent, but by sheer, unadulterated inexperience. And the world, parched and yearning, waited patiently for its ruler to stumble upon a solution to its greatest thirst. A solution that would, as you'll soon discover, come about in the most unexpected and accidental way. You stand, or perhaps you float, in the very heart of this nascent cosmos, a universe still humming with the fresh-baked scent of creation. A place where the concept of a rain cloud was as foreign as, well, a perfectly brewed chamomile tea on a Tuesday. The air around you isn't just warm. It's a dry, pervasive embrace, a constant, almost physical pressure that settles on your skin. Imagine stepping out of a sauna, but instead of cooling down, the air just stays that way forever. There's no dampness, no hint of moisture to cling to, just this vast, unending aridity. The world beneath you, a sprawling canvas of emerging landscapes, pulses with an undeniable, if somewhat desperate, vibrancy. Oh, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong. The early mountains scrape against the perpetually clear sky, their peaks catching the relentless, golden gaze of the sun, which, by the way, was really putting in the overtime back then. Like an overachieving intern, it just wouldn't quit, pouring down light and warmth without a single break. You can almost hear it humming, a low, constant thrum of energy. But that energy, that endless sunlight, was also the very thing contributing to the growing problem. You see, the nascent world, for all its youthful vigor, was beginning to feel a profound, aching thirst. It wasn't the kind of thirst you feel after a long run, where a glass of water solves everything. No, this was a deeper, more existential yearning. Every molecule, every budding tendril of life, every grain of sand seemed to whisper, then murmur, then collectively sigh for something more, something wet. It was like trying to bake a cake with only flour and sugar. You had the base, the potential, but you were missing that crucial binding element. The ground beneath your feet, if you were to reach down and touch it, would feel like fine, warm dust, sifting through your fingers with an almost mournful sigh. There was no cool earth, no damp patches hidden in the shade of the emerging flora. Even the shade itself felt like a dry, brittle thing, offering little respite from the sun's unyielding scrutiny. The few pioneering plants, tenacious little things, were tough. Think succulents on steroids, or the kind of desert cacti that look like they've seen things, hard things, and decided to just roll with it. They clung to life with a fierce, almost stubborn grip, their leaves leathery, their stems thick, their very existence a testament to sheer, unadulterated will. But even they, in their silent, photosynthetic way, were beginning to show the strain. Their colors, while still vibrant, had a certain muted quality, like a painting left out in the sun for too long. The air itself held a peculiar stillness. Without the subtle dance of evaporating moisture, without the whispers of humidity, there were no gentle breezes carrying the scent of damp earth or the promise of a distant storm. It was just still. The heat shimmered above the nascent plains, distorting the horizon into a wavy mirage that offered false hope of shimmering pools. You'd squint, thinking you saw something, only for it to vanish like a forgotten dream. It was the universe's most elaborate and least helpful prank. And it wasn't just the landscape that felt it. The very earliest, simplest forms of life, the little microbes and single-celled organisms that were just starting to get their groove on, were finding it increasingly difficult. They clung to the few remaining pockets of primordial ooze, which were slowly, inexorably shrinking. Imagine trying to live in a puddle that's evaporating before your very eyes, and you get a sense of their daily struggle. It was a race against the sun, a desperate scramble for survival in a world that seemed determined to dry them out. Scholars often debate whether this period of intense cosmic thirst was a pre-programmed phase of creation, a necessary crucible for the world to truly appreciate what was to come, or simply an oversight in the universe's initial design specifications. Was it like a beta test where they forgot to include the hydration patch? We may never know for sure, but the impact was undeniable. The entire nascent ecosystem was teetering on the edge, not of collapse, but of a kind of static, sun-baked stasis. Even the rocks, ancient and stoic as they were, seemed to radiate a dry heat, storing the sun's energy and radiating it back into the already parched air. You could almost hear them crackle, not from cold, but from an internal dryness, a subtle fragmentation born of constant desiccation. It was a world of perpetually chapped lips, if worlds had lips. And if they did, they'd be begging for a cosmic lip balm, or better yet, a giant, refreshing drink. This relentless dryness was shaping the world in profound ways. For instance, did you know that in our own history, many ancient civilizations, like those in Mesopotamia, developed incredibly sophisticated irrigation systems precisely because water was so precious and unevenly distributed? They built canals and aqueducts, understanding that access to water was fundamental for life and prosperity. This nascent world, however, hadn't even conceived of the problem, let alone a solution. It was like trying to invent the wheel when you haven't even figured out what a load is yet. The yearning was palpable, a silent hum across the barren plains and through the skeletal branches of the emerging trees. It wasn't a loud complaint, mind you. The world wasn't throwing a tantrum. It was more like a deep, internal ache, a quiet longing for something it didn't even know existed. Imagine waking up every day feeling vaguely unsatisfied, knowing something is missing, but having no concept of what that something might be. That was the world's vibe. It yearned for the cool touch, the gentle caress, the life-giving essence that only water could provide. And here's a quirky little tidbit for you. Some early, very fringe theories suggest that during this period, the very first forms of what we might call atmospheric dust bunnies began to form. Not from lint, of course, but from superfine particles of dried earth and cosmic detritus, perpetually suspended in the dry, still air. They weren't clouds, not by a long shot, but they were the universe's first, very humble attempt at creating something ethereal in the sky, even if it was just glorified dirt. You could almost picture them, drifting aimlessly, utterly useless for anything but perhaps a very abstract art installation. The days bled into nights, and nights into days, under the watchful, unblinking eye of the sun. There were no dramatic sunsets painted with moisture-laden clouds, no soft, diffused light, just the stark transition from blinding brilliance to the cold, star-dusted velvet of the void. And then, back again, with the sun rising once more, promising another cycle of relentless warmth and unending thirst. The world was vibrant, yes, but it was also holding its breath, waiting for a sigh of relief it didn't even know it needed. This growing, unspoken yearning was building, like pressure in a sealed chamber, unknowingly setting the stage for a very unexpected, very wet, cosmic debut. You feel it, don't you? That parched, sandpaper on your tongue sensation. Imagine that, but amplify it by 1,000, then stretch it across an entire nascent cosmos. That's what it was like for the gods, perched on their nascent Olympus, or wherever divine beings hung out before they had proper marble palaces. You see, even if you're an immortal being, made of starlight and pure potential, you still feel the relentless, unforgiving dryness. It wasn't just the mortals, those tiny, fledgling creatures still figuring out how to stand upright without tripping over their own feet, who were suffering. Oh no, the divine patience it was wearing thin, like an old, overwashed toga. You can practically hear the collective sigh, a dry, rustling sound that seemed to echo across the sun-baked plains and through the dusty groves. Every morning, the sun, still a bit too enthusiastic in its youth, would rise, blazing with an intensity that promised only more heat, more evaporation, more of that soul-sucking aridity. You'd think gods would be immune to such mundane discomforts, wouldn't you? But even their ambrosia, the nectar of the gods, started to taste a little less refreshing, a bit like lukewarm, slightly dusty lemonade. And don't even get me started on the divine skincare routine. Apparently, even immortal skin can get a bit flaky without proper hydration. It was a real crisis, if you ask me. Among them, one goddess in particular was reaching the end of her very long, very divine rope. You know Hera, don't you? The queen of the gods, often depicted as a bit intense. But beneath the regal bearing and the occasional flash of fury, usually directed at Zeus, but we'll get to that later, she possessed a deep, inherent connection to the well-being of the world. She was the goddess of marriage and childbirth, the protector of women, and by extension, the nurturer of nascent life. And what she saw around her was life, struggling. You see the way her brow furrows, not just with annoyance, but with genuine concern. She watches as the few struggling sprouts of green, those brave little pioneers of flora, simply shrivel and turn to brittle dust. She hears the faint, desperate chirps of tiny, unformed creatures, their throats too dry to sing. The rivers, mere trickles now, looked less like veins of life and more like dusty scars across the land. It was a cosmic dust bowl, a perpetual static electricity nightmare, and frankly, it was getting on her nerves. Imagine her frustration. You're a goddess of immense power, capable of influencing destinies. Yet here you are, unable to conjure a single drop of dew. It's like being a master chef with all the ingredients but no working stove. The air itself felt heavy, thick with unseen dust motes, making every breath a slightly scratchy affair. Even the usually boisterous Dionysus, god of wine and revelry, was looking a bit glum, muttering about how difficult it was to get a good fermentation going when all the grapes were turning into raisins before they even ripened. And you can bet Poseidon was feeling utterly useless, his dominion, the mighty oceans, shrinking visibly at the edges, leaving behind vast, salt-crusted flats that shimmered mockingly under the relentless sun. It was enough to make even a god consider a permanent vacation to Tartarus, just for a change of scenery. This relentless dryness was more than just an inconvenience. It was a fundamental imbalance. Hera, with her deep intuition for the natural order, understood this on a visceral level. It wasn't just about comfort. It was about the very fabric of existence beginning to fray. She knew, with a certainty that only a goddess could possess, that something had to change. And she knew exactly who needed to make it change. You watch her stride, her silken robes rustling with an almost audible dryness, across the shimmering, sun-baked marble of their temporary divine abode. Her destination? The makeshift throne of Zeus, who, you might imagine, was probably trying to look busy, perhaps polishing a lightning bolt or attempting to teach a baby griffin to fetch. He had a tendency to be less proactive about certain cosmic domestic issues, and historians still argue whether Zeus genuinely underestimated the severity of the drought or if he was simply hoping it would resolve itself, like a forgotten pile of laundry. Hera arrives before him, and you can practically feel the temperature drop a few degrees, despite the blazing sun. There's a certain stillness in the air, the kind that precedes either a profound declaration or a very stern lecture. Zeus, she begins, her voice, usually a melodic cascade, now possessing a sharp, almost brittle edge to it. We need to talk. You see Zeus visibly flinch. He knows that tone. It's the tone that means a divine problem has reached critical mass, and he, as the king of the gods, is squarely in the crosshairs. He tries to offer a placating smile, a sort of everything's fine dear expression, but it melts under Hera's gaze like ice cream on a hot day. This dryness, she continues, gesturing broadly with a hand that seems to encompass the entire parched cosmos. It cannot continue. The world is withering. The nascent life, the very potential of this new creation, is suffocating under this constant, unforgiving sun. Her voice rises slightly, a note of desperation creeping in. Even we are not immune. My gardens, Zeus, they are but dust. The springs are naught but cracked earth. The creatures, they perish before they even truly begin to live. You can sense the weight of her plea. It's not just a complaint. It's an urgent petition from the very core of her being. She speaks of the barrenness, the lack of growth, the profound silence that has replaced the nascent hum of life. She reminds him of the early civilizations that would one day rise, like those in Mesopotamia, which understood the absolute necessity of water, building their entire societies around mighty rivers, a concept completely alien to this current, arid world. Without water, she implicitly argues, there would be no civilizations to rise, no stories to tell, no mortals to worship them. We are gods, she states, her voice regaining some of its regal authority. But what good is our power if we cannot even sustain the very world we oversee? The air crackles with static, Zeus. My hair is constantly standing on end. It's utterly undignified, and frankly, I'm tired of seeing everything turn to dust. Even the divine linens are crunchy. You can almost hear a tiny, divine sigh of exasperation escape her lips. This isn't just about comfort, my love. It's about the very future of everything. She leans closer, her gaze unwavering. You are the king. You wield immense power. The very fabric of reality bends to your will. Is there truly nothing you can do? No great fountain, no eternal spring you can conjure? We cannot simply stand by and watch this magnificent, young world wither away. It's like trying to bake a cake without any liquid. It just crumbles into a dry, sad mess. And trust me, no one wants a dry, sad mess, especially not when it's an entire planet. She speaks with a passion that transcends mere annoyance, a deep, maternal concern for the struggling world. She'd probably even tried a few of her own, smaller-scale divine remedies, perhaps whispering incantations over a wilting flower, only to watch it crumble anyway. She might have even attempted some ancient rain-making rituals, perhaps trying to replicate the odd practices of some future cultures who believed that peculiar rain stones could summon water from the sky, only to find that even divine will couldn't force a single drop of moisture from the perpetually clear blue. Zeus, for his part, shifts uncomfortably on his throne. He knows Hera is right. He feels the dryness too, though perhaps not with the same immediate, nurturing concern. He'd been trying to ignore it, hoping it was just a phase, like a particularly long, awkward teenage growth spurt for the universe. But Hera's urgent plea, delivered with such intensity and laced with just the right amount of divine marital pressure, was impossible to ignore. Her words hung in the dry air, heavy with unspoken consequences. The queen of the gods had spoken, and her message was clear. Do something. Now, all right, settle in, because today we're diving back into the cosmic chaos, specifically into the mind of a young, powerful, yet surprisingly clueless Zeus. You've seen the world, fresh from creation, vibrant but parched, yearning for a drink. You've heard Hera's urgent, increasingly exasperated pleas for moisture. Now, you're about to witness Zeus, the self-proclaimed king of the cosmos, roll up his divine sleeves and get to work, or at least attempt to. You see, Zeus was, at his core, a problem solver. He had just successfully overthrown the Titans, which, let's be honest, was a pretty big problem to solve. So, when faced with the world's insatiable thirst, his first instinct wasn't to ponder or consult. It was to act. He was like that friend who tries to fix everything with a hammer, even when it's clearly a screwdriver job. And in this case, the hammer was raw, untempered divine power, and the problem was, well, the entire planet needed watering. Imagine, if you will, Zeus standing atop Mount Olympus, or what would become Mount Olympus, for back then, even the mountains felt brittle, their peaks reaching for a sky that offered no solace. The ground beneath his magnificent, albeit dusty, sandaled feet was cracked and dry, a mosaic of despair. You can almost feel the heat radiating off it, shimmering waves distorting the distant horizon. The air itself felt thin, rasping in your throat as if you'd just run a marathon through a kiln. Even the nascent flora, what little had managed to sprout, was brown and brittle, whispering a silent plea for hydration. Zeus, with a furrowed brow that suggested intense concentration, or perhaps just mild indigestion from a particularly dry ambrosia cracker, decided his first course of action would be the most direct. Simply will water into existence. He flexed his immense, nascent power, focusing his divine will with the intensity of 1,000 suns. You might imagine a great roar, a flash of light, perhaps the ground trembling. And indeed, there was a faint shimmer in the air, a momentary ripple in the heat haze. But then, nothing. Well, almost nothing. A few isolated droplets, no larger than a newborn's tear, splattered onto a sun-baked rock before evaporating instantly with a faint hiss, like water hitting a hot griddle. It was less a rain shower and more a cosmic spit take. Zeus blinked. He frowned. He tried again, summoning all his might, gritting his teeth, his muscles tensing. This time, a slightly larger puddle formed, perhaps the size of a dinner plate, but it too vanished within seconds, leaving behind only a faint, damp stain that quickly faded. It was like trying to fill an Olympic swimming pool with a single-serve coffee machine. Utterly, hilariously, tragically ineffective. You might hear him mutter, his voice echoing slightly in the vast, dry expanse. Perhaps a more localized approach. He then tried focusing his power on specific, particularly parched regions. You could see him pointing a finger, a faint glow emanating from his fingertip, like a celestial laser pointer. He'd target a valley, then a plain, then a fledgling forest. The result was always the same. A brief, almost apologetic sizzle of moisture, followed by an immediate return to bone-dry conditions. It was as if the very air was mocking him, greedily sucking up any moisture before it could even register. His next brilliant idea, born from the frustration of direct summoning, was to try and make the earth sweat. If the world was a living entity, surely it had moisture within it, just waiting to be coaxed out. He reasoned that if he intensified the sun's rays in certain areas, he could draw out subterranean water, much like a giant, divine dehumidifier running in reverse. You'd see patches of land glow with an unnatural, searing heat, the air above them shimmering violently. The ground would crackle, and fine dust would rise in swirling eddies. But instead of bubbling springs or gushing rivers, all he managed to create were even hotter, even drier patches of land, turning nascent topsoil into fine, choking powder. It was like trying to get juice from a stone by baking it in an oven. All you get is a very hot, very dry stone. Zeus, ever the creative thinker in his initial ineptitude, then moved on to something truly bizarre. He attempted to channel moisture from his own divine essence. You might watch him take a deep, booming breath, his chest expanding with cosmic energy, and then exhale a mighty gust of wind across the land. He envisioned this breath as a moist, life-giving vapor. But what emerged was a hot, dry gale that simply picked up the newly created dust, swirling it into vast, choking storms that blotted out the sun for hours, depositing layers of grit over everything. It was less a gentle mist and more a divine leaf blower set to max output in a desert. The newly formed mountains groaned under the onslaught, and the fledgling plants, already struggling, were now buried under miniature dunes. He even tried a more visceral approach, which, for a god, is saying something. He attempted to generate moisture from his own body, thinking that if he, a divine being, could produce it, surely it would be enough. He tried to will his own tears to fall, not out of sadness, but as a deliberate act of hydration. But divine tears are not so easily shed, especially not on command for irrigation purposes. And even if they were, imagine the scale. A god's tear might be a small lake, perhaps, but the entire world needed quenching. It was a drop in the cosmic bucket, a fleeting glimmer of wetness that evaporated before it could even touch the ground. You might compare it to trying to water a vast field with the contents of a single thimble. His failures weren't just limited to direct application. Zeus, in his early problem-solving phase, also considered structural solutions. He reasoned that perhaps the water was just stuck somewhere, trapped beneath the earth. He tried to use his strength to literally reshape the landscape, carving vast, deep channels into the earth, hoping to create pathways for water that simply wasn't there. You'd witness him, a colossal figure, straining, his muscles rippling, as he tore through nascent continents, creating canyons and ravines that stretched for miles. But these magnificent, newly formed riverbeds lay empty and dry, stark reminders of his futility. It was like building the most intricate, beautiful aqueduct system, only to realize you had no reservoir, no source, no river to feed it. Historians still argue whether Zeus's early, destructive landscape-altering attempts were a conscious part of his learning process or merely the result of divine impatience. The frustration mounted. You could almost hear the cosmic sigh of exasperation from the young god. He tried brute force, subtle manipulation, even self-generated moisture. Nothing worked. The world remained parched. The air crackled with dryness, and Hera's pleas grew sharper, more pointed. He was running out of ideas, and the pressure was building. It was like watching someone try every button on a remote control, convinced one of them must be the water button, even though it's clearly not a feature of the remote. This period of trial and error was crucial, though. It showed Zeus the limitations of his direct power when faced with a problem of this magnitude and nuance. He couldn't just zap water into existence or will the earth to hydrate itself. The fundamental ingredient was missing. It made him realize that creation wasn't just about commanding. It was about understanding the underlying mechanisms. You might even recall the quirky, fringe tidbit about ancient water witches or dowsers, who claimed to find water using a divining rod. Zeus, in his own cosmic way, was trying every divine dowsing method imaginable, without the understanding of what he was actually looking for. He was searching for a hidden spring in a universe that hadn't even invented the concept of a spring yet. He was the ultimate do-it-yourself enthusiast, but without a blueprint, and without the crucial raw materials. He needed a new approach, something beyond brute force or simple command. You can practically feel the divine exasperation radiating from Mount Olympus. After all his grand, albeit slightly clumsy, attempts to coax moisture from a stubbornly dry cosmos, Zeus, the young king of the gods, was well over it. You know that feeling when you've tried everything, from the obvious to the ridiculous, and nothing has worked? Multiply that by about 1,000,000, imbue it with cosmic power, and you're getting close to Zeus's mood. The world, still a canvas of vibrant but parched hues, stretched out beneath him, baking under an unrelenting sun that, frankly, was starting to feel a bit like a cosmic spotlight mocking his efforts. Every shimmering mirage on the horizon was a personal affront, every dust devil a tiny, twirling reminder of his failures. So, you find Zeus, not in a grand throne room issuing decrees, but more like a frustrated mad scientist in his celestial lab. He's pacing, you imagine, a furrow in his brow that could carve canyons into bedrock. His previous methods, while well-intentioned, had been about as effective as trying to water a desert with a thimble. He tried commanding the land to simply be wet, which, as you can guess, didn't work. He tried to sweat profusely over the land, reasoning that divine perspiration must surely be hydrating, but it just evaporated before it touched the thirsty earth, leaving him feeling rather sticky and a tad self-conscious. And let's not even get into the time he tried to cry a river, only to find divine tears, much like divine sweat, are rather ephemeral in an eternally arid climate. It was all very dry. But Zeus, for all his youthful bluster, was also remarkably persistent. He just needed a new angle. If direct command and personal effusion weren't cutting it, then perhaps a more alchemical approach was required. He turned his gaze inward, towards the very essence of divinity, the substances that fueled the gods themselves. And what substance, you ask, is more divine than ambrosia? Imagine, if you will, the shimmering golden liquid that flowed through the veins of the Olympians. Ambrosia. It wasn't merely food. It was the very essence of immortality, a drinkable, edible, luminous concentrate of cosmic power and pure, unadulterated divinity. It tasted, so the legends whisper, like honey and sunshine and the freshest mountain air, all rolled into one. For us mortals, even a whiff of it would be overwhelming, but for a god like Zeus, it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It sustained them, healed them, and kept them eternally youthful and powerful. If anything could bring life and sustenance to the world, Surely it was this. You watch as Zeus, with a newfound glint in his eye, a spark of curiosity mingled with a desperate hope, begins to gather his ingredients. He's not just pouring ambrosia from a chalice. He's refining it, concentrating it, trying to understand its fundamental properties. He starts with small vials, glowing faintly in his massive hands. He holds them up to the celestial light, swirling the golden liquid, observing how it catches the light, how it seems to pulse with a subtle energy. You can almost hear the soft, almost imperceptible hum it emits, a sound like 1,000 tiny bees buzzing in perfect harmony, if those bees were made of pure light. He dips a finger, testing its viscosity. Is it thick enough? Too thin? He tastes it, not for pleasure, but for analysis, trying to discern if its hydrating properties could be amplified. You might recall Thales of Miletus, often considered the first philosopher, who famously theorized that water was the fundamental substance of the universe. Well, Zeus was essentially trying to find his fundamental substance, but with a divine twist. He wasn't just observing. He was actively trying to reverse engineer the very concept of life-giving liquid from the most potent substance he knew. His celestial workshop, usually reserved for forging thunderbolts or crafting new constellations, takes on the air of a high-stakes distillery. You see him with various divine instruments, not beakers and Bunsen burners, but shimmering crystal alembics and ethereal crucibles that float and glow with an inner light. He's mixing ambrosia with tiny pinpricks of starlight, hoping to infuse it with the cool, distant energy of the cosmos. He adds specks of solidified moonlight, thinking perhaps the serene, reflective quality of the moon could somehow encourage fluidity. He even tries introducing microscopic fragments of nascent planetary cores, reasoning that if they contain the building blocks of worlds, they might contain the building blocks of world-sustaining water. It's all very experimental, very seat of his pants. There's a quirky old belief, not widely held now, that some ancient peoples thought rain was literally the tears of grieving deities. But here, you're witnessing something far more deliberate, if equally desperate. Zeus isn't crying, he's creating. He's trying to force the universe to yield moisture by sheer force of divine will and chemical, or rather, alchemical recombination. He tries heating the ambrosia, watching as it shimmers and boils, releasing fragrant, golden vapors that smell like a divine bakery. He tries cooling it, using blasts of cosmic chill that would freeze a mortal solid in an instant, hoping it might condense into something heavier, something more substantial. He's muttering to himself, you imagine, a low rumble like distant thunder, questioning his methods, celebrating tiny, ephemeral successes, and grumbling at the inevitable failures. No, too airy. He might sigh, as a wisp of golden mist dissipates before it even leaves his palm. Needs more oomph. He begins to scale up his experiments. Small vials give way to larger crystalline bowls, then to truly enormous, glowing vats that shimmer with the concentrated power of pure divinity. The air around him grows thick with the scent of ambrosia, sweet and intoxicating, almost too rich for mortal senses. It's like being in a divine candy factory, if the candy could grant immortality and solve global droughts. You can almost feel the sticky sweetness in the air, a warmth that is both comforting and slightly cloying. He's learning, through trial and error, that while ambrosia is potent, it's also stubbornly unwatery. It refuses to behave like water. It evaporates too quickly, or it congeals into a gelatinous mass, or it simply refuses to spread, instead forming perfect, self-contained spheres that bounce off the parched ground like golden marbles. He's trying to coax it into a new form, a form that can hydrate a world, but it's like trying to make a brick behave like a sponge. Scholars still debate whether Zeus's initial experiments were guided by any divine foresight or pure, unadulterated frustration. You, watching him now, can see it's a healthy mix of both. He's driven by the very real need of the burgeoning world, but his methods are, shall we say, less than perfectly scientific. More like a cosmic chef throwing everything into the pot and hoping for a miracle. He's trying to force the very essence of life-giving divinity into a form that can quench the thirst of a planet. It's a monumental task, and the pressure is mounting. As his frustration reaches a boiling point, so too do his experiments. He's no longer content with small, controlled tests. He's pouring, mixing, and stirring with a divine abandon, his immense power now fully focused on this singular, desperate goal. The golden ambrosia swirls and churns in the largest chalice he possesses, a vessel usually reserved for the most sacred Olympian feasts. He's not just looking for a solution. He's practically willing it into existence, pushing the boundaries of divine substance, hoping to unlock its hidden potential to become something entirely new, something wet. So, you've been on this journey with young Zeus, haven't you? You've seen his frustration mount, his divine brow furrowing like a freshly plowed field, only without the promise of future crops, because, well, no rain. He's tried everything from divinely charged squirt guns to attempting to sweat oceans, all to no avail. The world remains stubbornly, unforgivingly parched. And now you find him in his celestial workshop, a place that, let's be honest, looks less like a sleek, minimalist deity lab and more like a cosmic garage sale exploded. There are discarded prototypes of sun lamps that only made things hotter, a pile of what looks suspiciously like petrified thunderclouds that refuse to form, and a general aura of divine desperation. He's hunched over a workbench, illuminated by the soft, pulsating glow of an arcane apparatus that hums with the deep, resonant thrum of creation itself. This isn't a place for casual visitors, mind you. The air crackles with latent energy, making the tiny hairs on your arms stand on end, a bit like when you walk past one of those old, supercharged TV sets. Zeus, however, is oblivious to the theatrics. His focus is entirely on the magnificent vessel before him, a chalice. Oh, but not just any chalice. This isn't your grandma's chipped teacup, nor is it the kind of goblet you'd clink at a fancy celestial dinner party. No, this is the chalice of cosmic potency, forged from stardust and the whispers of nascent galaxies. It shimmers with an internal light, a deep, ethereal amethyst that seems to drink in the surrounding gloom. Its surface, when you lean in close, appears to be etched with constellations, each tiny star a pinprick of pure, concentrated light. Inside this magnificent vessel, Zeus is carefully, meticulously, pouring something truly extraordinary. Remember how he was experimenting with ambrosia? Well, this isn't just ambrosia anymore. This is ambrosia plus, ambrosia max, ambrosia ultimate. It's a concoction born from countless divine failures, infused with the very essence of life, distilled through celestial alembics that look like giant, spiraling nebulae. The liquid itself is a sight to behold. It possesses an almost viscous quality, not thick like syrup, but with a palpable weight, a slow, deliberate flow. Its color shifts from a deep, shimmering cerulean to a vibrant emerald, then to a soft, pearlescent white, like liquid moonlight. As it pours, you can hear a faint, almost imperceptible hum, like a million tiny bees buzzing in harmony, or perhaps the distant whisper of a waterfall that hasn't yet learned how to fall. He's trying to create a universal hydrator, you see, something that could be sprinkled over the world like fairy dust, instantly revitalizing everything. A divine water concentrate, if you will. You can almost hear him muttering to himself, just a little more. Almost there. This time, it has to work. He's so engrossed, so utterly consumed by the delicate balance of divine ingredients, that his usual boisterous energy is replaced by a rare, almost meditative focus. It reminds you a bit of a very serious baker attempting to perfect a new, notoriously tricky soufflé. You know, the kind where one wrong move could mean total collapse. Or, in this case, cosmic disaster. He's using a ladle, mind you, a ladle forged from solidified starlight, its handle cool and smooth even through your imaginary divine gloves. He dips it into a larger vat of the primordial liquid, then brings it slowly, steadily, towards the chalice of cosmic potency. Each drop that falls into the chalice creates a tiny, iridescent ripple that expands outwards, reflecting the shifting colors of the liquid within. The hum intensifies slightly with each addition, a low, contented purr. Zeus's brow is furrowed in concentration, his tongue poking out just slightly, a telltale sign of deep focus, even for a god. He's so close to what he believes will be the perfect solution. And here's where the accident part comes in, because even gods, especially young, slightly overconfident ones, are prone to moments of, well, human-like clumsiness. You see, Zeus, in his divine haste and single-minded pursuit of hydration, has been working for what feels like eons without a break. The celestial workshop hasn't seen a broom in, probably a millennium. And right there, nestled amidst a pile of discarded experiments, is a small, petrified meteoroid. It's not particularly large, perhaps the size of a very stubborn, eternally napping cosmic squirrel. This meteoroid, historians still argue whether it was a deliberate prank by a mischievous minor deity or just an unfortunate consequence of cosmic entropy, was precisely positioned. As Zeus brings the ladle back for what he believes is the final, perfect pour, his elbow, just ever so slightly, brushes against this forgotten space rock. It's a tiny nudge, barely perceptible, but enough. The meteoroid, dislodged from its precarious perch, rolls with a soft, almost apologetic thud, right into the path of Zeus's foot. Now, imagine trying to balance a full glass of something incredibly precious, something that could change the very fabric of reality, and then suddenly you stub your toe. You instinctively flinch, don't you? You gasp, you perhaps let out a small, undignified yelp. That's exactly what happens to Zeus. He stumbles. Not a grand, theatrical fall, mind you, but a quick, ungainly lurch forward. His divine balance, usually as stable as a supermassive black hole, falters for a crucial microsecond. The ladle, still filled with that precious, shimmering liquid, jerks. And then, the liquid, instead of gently arcing into the chalice, spills. It doesn't just dribble. It sloshes, a majestic, uncontrolled surge of cerulean and emerald and pearlescent white. It overflows the chalice of cosmic potency, cascading over its stardust-forged lip, a waterfall of pure, concentrated divine essence. The sight is simultaneously beautiful and horrifying, like watching a priceless vase shatter in slow motion. The sound of it, if you were to somehow be there, would be less a splash and more a resonant whoosh, followed by a series of deep, liquid thumps as the potent divine liquid hits the celestial workbench. It pools and spreads, shimmering with an unearthly glow, crawling across the surface like liquid light. You can almost feel the chill radiating from it, despite its inherent warmth, a paradox of divine energy. Smells, well, it smells like creation itself, like ozone after a lightning strike, mixed with the clean scent of fresh rain that hasn't yet existed, and a hint of something sweet, like nectar and blooming flowers. It's a scent that would make you feel both incredibly energized and profoundly calm, all at once. Zeus freezes. His eyes, usually alight with fiery determination, are wide with a mixture of shock and utter dismay. He looks down at the spreading pool of his meticulously crafted solution, a silent scream of, "Oh, bother," echoing through the cosmic workshop. It's the divine equivalent of knocking over your entire meticulously built Jenga tower just as you were about to place the final winning block. All that effort, all that concentration literally spilled. You can almost see the thought bubble above his head. Well, that was helpful. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated, divine facepalm. The liquid, however, isn't behaving like your average spilled milk. It's not just soaking into the workbench. Instead, as it spreads, it seems to evaporate almost instantly, not dissipating into nothingness, but rather rising. It's as if the divine essence is too potent to simply lie there. It transforms, almost immediately, into a fine, ethereal mist, a shimmering vapor that begins to curl upwards, away from the workbench, towards the celestial ceiling of Zeus's workshop. It's a beautiful, yet unsettling sight, like watching smoke from a divine incense burner. Only this smoke is alive, pulsing with the very energy Zeus poured into it. This accidental spill, this moment of divine clumsiness, is not an ending. You can feel it in the air, a palpable shift in the cosmic currents. This isn't just a mess. It's a momentous, pivotal moment. The universe, unknowingly, has just been given its first accidental taste of what's to come. You stand now, not on the parched earth, but in the very air itself, a silent, invisible observer floating just above the nascent world. The celestial chalice, moments ago so gloriously, disastrously overflowing, has been righted. But the deed, as they say, is done. The divine liquid, that potent, shimmering ambrosial concoction, has not simply vanished. Oh no, it has begun its slow, majestic, and utterly unprecedented journey upwards. Imagine, if you will, the most exquisite iridescent glitter bomb, but in reverse and in super slow motion. You see it now, a subtle, almost imperceptible shimmer rising from the ground where the spill occurred. It's not just liquid evaporating. That's far too mundane for divine ichor. No, this is different. This is essence. It's a fine, almost gaseous mist, imbued with the very energetic signature of Olympus. It carries with it the faint, sweet scent of nectar and a whisper of ozone, like the air after a distant, silent lightning strike. It's less a vapor trail and more a spiritual exhalation, rising from the Earth's surface like a collective sigh of relief from the very molecules themselves, unknowingly anticipating a change. You might strain your eyes, trying to catch the individual motes of this cosmic residue. They are tiny, almost invisible, like dust motes dancing in a sunbeam, but infinitely more radiant. Each particle, however minute, carries a charge, a spark of the divine energy that infused Zeus's experimental brew. They drift upwards, not in a chaotic scramble, but with an almost purposeful, languid grace. Think of it like watching microscopic dandelion seeds, each one carrying a tiny, luminous lantern, slowly ascending into the vast, clear blue. It's an ethereal ballet, choreographed by pure accident, playing out on a stage as grand as the cosmos itself. As these particles rise, they begin to spread out, diffusing into the upper atmosphere. This wasn't a contained spill, remember. It was a veritable Niagara Falls of God juice. So, the residue doesn't just form a single column. It disperses, covering a vast expanse of the sky. You feel a subtle shift in the air pressure, a barely there hum that resonates deep within your bones, like the quiet thrum of a distant, colossal machine starting up for the very first time. It's the sound of potential, the whisper of chemistry and physics being rewritten on a cosmic scale. This isn't just water vapor, mind you. Oh heavens no. This is ambrosia, the food of the gods, the very substance that granted them immortality and power, now diffused into the atmospheric canvas. It's like spilling a vial of pure, concentrated magic. And as it rises, it doesn't just disappear. It starts to gather. The individual motes, drawn by an unseen, inherent pull, perhaps a latent magnetic property of divine essence, or simply the universe's natural inclination towards order, even accidental order, begin to seek each other out. You notice it first in the way the light begins to subtly change. The bright, unyielding blue of the sky, once so uniform and unwavering, now has a faint, almost imperceptible haze to it. It's not a cloud in the conventional sense, not yet. It's more like the air itself is shimmering, as if billions of microscopic mirrors have been scattered throughout the upper reaches of the atmosphere. When the sun hits these divine particles, they don't just reflect light. They refract it, they absorb it, they sing with it. It's a barely there optical phenomenon, a celestial airglow that no mortal eye has ever witnessed, because, well, it's never existed before. This process of gathering is incredibly slow, almost agonizingly so, from your human perspective. Imagine watching paint dry, but the paint is made of starlight and wishes, and it's drying across the entire visible sky. Scholars still debate whether the very fabric of the cosmos remembered the divine liquid, or if it was simply a matter of elemental attraction, a cosmic version of static cling on an unprecedented scale. Whatever the mechanism, the particles, infinitesimally small, begin to bond. They cling to each other, forming larger, still transparent clusters. It's like watching a cosmic dust bunny grow, except this dust bunny is made of pure, distilled divinity. The ancient Greeks, as you might know, believed in ether, a pure, luminous substance that filled the upper regions of the cosmos, distinct from the air we breathe. This divine essence, now coalescing, was perhaps the closest thing to that mythical ether the world had ever actually experienced. It was a substance of unparalleled purity and power, accidentally introduced into the lower, more mundane atmospheric layers. You can almost hear the cosmic sighs of the elements, a collective well, that's new. As the hours stretch on, and then the days, the gathering continues. The initial spill covered a significant portion of Zeus's domain, meaning this coalescing isn't happening in just one spot. It's a widespread atmospheric phenomenon, a diffuse veil forming across the sky. You might notice that the stars, when night falls, seem to twinkle with a slightly different quality, as if viewed through a gossamer, shimmering curtain. It's a subtle distortion, a hint that something fundamental has changed in the sky above. This accumulating mist and energy is still largely invisible, a ghost of a presence. It's not dense enough to block the sun, nor opaque enough to cast shadows, but you can feel its growing presence. The air, once so dry and sharp, now has a peculiar softness to it, a subtle humidity that wasn't there before. It's the ghost of the ambrosia, lingering, permeating everything. Think of it like the faint, persistent scent of baking that lingers in a house long after the cookies are gone. This is the lingering scent of divine liquid, now diffused across the heavens. It's almost like the universe is trying to clean up a very big, very expensive spill, but in doing so, it's inadvertently creating something entirely new. Zeus, down on the ground, probably just thought he'd made a colossal mess and was hoping no one would notice the shimmering, faintly glowing residue rising from his experimental lab. Little did he know, his divine housekeeping efforts were about to revolutionize the entire planet. Though, let's be honest, divine dry cleaning bills would probably be astronomical, you'd imagine. You might even see, if you squint just right, the occasional flicker of light within this gathering haze, like tiny internal fireworks. These are minute energy discharges, the divine essence interacting with itself, perhaps even with the ambient cosmic rays. It's not lightning, not yet. Just tiny, nascent sparks like the first tentative synapses firing in a newborn brain. It's the sky, for the first time, beginning to hum with a new kind of power. This gathering process isn't a sudden event. It's a patient, methodical aggregation. Each tiny particle of ambrosial residue, each wisp of divine energy, is drawn to its brethren, slowly, surely, forming larger and larger aggregations. It's like watching countless tiny magnets, invisible at first, slowly, painstakingly drawing together to form a larger, more discernible mass. The sky, once an empty canvas, is now slowly, subtly, being painted with an invisible primer, waiting for the next accidental stroke of genius. And as this cosmic residue continues its slow, majestic coalescence, you can almost hear the sky itself breathing, a new, gentle intake of something it has never known before. It's a quiet, almost imperceptible transformation, but one that will have profound and lasting consequences. The stage is set, the ingredients are gathering, and the universe holds its breath, unaware of the impending, glorious deluge. You stand there, a silent, unseen observer in a cosmos still finding its rhythm, and you watch as the very air begins to thicken. Remember that potent divine liquid from the chalice, the stuff that went sloshing over the side, a cosmic oopsie of epic proportions? Well, the immediate splash was just the beginning. The residue, the lingering energy, the microscopic droplets of pure, undiluted divine essence. They didn't just vanish. Oh no, they hung there, suspended in the nascent atmosphere, shimmering with an almost imperceptible glow, like motes of dust caught in a sunbeam, but infinitely more powerful. And then you start to notice it, a faint haze, a subtle blurring of the pristine, unending blue that had always dominated the sky. It begins as nothing more than a whisper of change, a barely there smudge against the cosmic canvas. Think of it like a perfectly clean window slowly developing a film of condensation, but on a scale so grand it dwarfs mountains. This isn't a quick process, mind you. This is the universe taking its sweet, unhurried time to figure out what to do with a divine spill. For an omnipotent being, Zeus really wasn't big on wiping up spills. Maybe he thought the cosmic janitors would handle it, if cosmic janitors even existed back then. probably just a bunch of overworked nymphs with tiny sponges. As the moments stretch into what feel like eons in this fresh, unburdened world, you see these tiny, energetic particles, these ethereal remnants of divine liquid, begin to find each other. It's a slow, almost gentle aggregation. They drift, they swirl, they dance in an invisible current, drawn together by some unseen, fundamental force. Perhaps it's a latent divine magnetism, or maybe it's just the universe's innate desire for order, even when presented with something as chaotic as an accidental spill from the king of the gods. It's like when you're trying to bake a cake, and you accidentally drop a whole bag of flour, and suddenly your kitchen looks like a winter wonderland, only instead of flour, it's divine energy, and instead of your kitchen, it's the entire sky. And nobody knows how to use a cosmic vacuum cleaner. The haze deepens. That faint smudge becomes more pronounced, like a watercolor painting where the colors are just beginning to bleed into one another. You notice the light starting to dim, just ever so slightly, in that particular patch of sky. It's not an eclipse, not yet. It's more like the sun decided to take a very short, very subtle nap behind a sheer curtain. The edges of this gathering mass are indistinct, soft, and constantly shifting, like a smoke plume expanding in slow motion. It's nebulous, a word that perfectly captures its formlessness, its lack of definitive shape. It's not a solid object. It's a living, breathing, swirling entity of coalescing energy. You feel a subtle shift in the air pressure, a barely perceptible coolness creeping in, a stark contrast to the relentless warmth that has always defined this world. A hush falls over the land. The chirping of nascent birds, the rustle of the parched leaves, they all seem to quiet, as if holding their breath, sensing the profound change unfolding above them. This anomaly, this growing obscurity in the sky, begins to absorb the light rather than reflect it. It grows darker, not with the deep, inky blackness of night, but with a brooding, bruised kind of darkness, like a storm cloud gathering far, far away on the horizon. Only this horizon is directly overhead. This wasn't a phenomenon anyone, god or nascent mortal, had ever witnessed before. It was an anomaly in the purest sense of the word, something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected. And the feeling it evokes? Foreboding. It's not an immediate terror, but a creeping sense of unease. You look up and you just know that something profound, something unprecedented, is happening. It's the kind of feeling you get when the air goes still just before a major weather event, only amplified by 1,000. To this day, even the most esteemed scholars of divine causality and cosmic mechanics, huddled in their celestial libraries, find themselves locked in spirited, occasionally thunderous, debates. Historians still argue whether the precise atmospheric conditions, or perhaps a unique resonance from the spilled ambrosia, were the primary catalyst for this unprecedented aggregation. Was it purely random, or did the universe, in its infinite wisdom, seize upon Zeus's clumsiness as an opportunity to introduce a vital new element? As it continues to grow, drawing in more and more of the lingering divine residue, the mass starts to take on a more defined, albeit still amorphous, presence. It isn't quite a fall streak hole, those bizarre, almost alien-looking gaps that sometimes appear in clouds when ice crystals fall out, though the nascent divine anomaly had its own unsettling geometry. Nor was it one of those rare instances of undulatus asperatus, which look like turbulent ocean waves cresting across the sky, promising a storm even when there isn't one. No, this was something new, an entirely uncatalogued atmospheric phenomenon. It was less like a cloud and more like a cosmic bruise, slowly blooming across the azure canvas. You see, for millennia, long before we had meteorologists with fancy Doppler radars, humans looked to the sky with a profound sense of awe and, often, trepidation. Think of the ancient Babylonians, who meticulously charted celestial movements, believing the heavens held direct messages from the gods. Every unusual star, every strange cloud formation, was a potential omen, a divine whisper or shout. This nascent dark mass? It was shouting, but in a language no one yet understood. The gods themselves, peering down from Olympus, probably had a collective furrow in their divine brows. Hera, ever the pragmatist, might have simply wondered if Zeus had finally managed to break the sky itself. Zeus, for his part, was likely a mixture of bewilderment and a touch of pride, secretly thinking, "Oh, so that's what happens when I spill my drink. Fascinating." He certainly hadn't planned for it. This was pure, unadulterated, accidental innovation. One might even say it was the original cloud storage, though definitely not for your vacation photos. Unless your vacation photos were incredibly dark and ominous, which, to be fair, some of mine are. The mass now hangs heavy, a palpable presence in the sky, not just a visual oddity. It seems to pulse with a faint, internal energy, a quiet hum that you can almost feel vibrating in your bones if you listen closely enough. Its darkness is no longer just a shadow. It's a deep, rich, almost velvety black, tinged with the occasional flicker of unseen, confined light. It's like looking into a bottomless well, but upside down, right above your head. The edges are still soft, still nebulous, but the core is undeniably there. A growing, enigmatic heart of coalesced divine essence. It's a mystery, an enigma, an unexplained, foreboding dark mass that has absolutely no business being there. And yet, there it is. You're standing there, or rather, you're floating there, a cosmic observer in a universe that's just had a bit of an oopsie with some divine ambrosia. And now, hanging in the sky, where previously only the stark, unyielding blue of a perpetually sunny day had reigned, there's this thing, this anomaly. It's dark, it's nebulous, and it absolutely does not belong. Imagine, if you will, that you've meticulously cleaned your room, every single speck of dust banished, and then suddenly a rogue, dark, fluffy sock just appears, floating ominously in the middle of your pristine space. That's kind of the vibe you're picking up from Zeus. He's looking at it, head cocked, a faint frown creasing his magnificent brow. You can practically hear the gears grinding in that divine mind of his. It's not just there. It's unexplained. And in Zeus's world, unexplained often translates to something I need to either conquer, understand, or zap into oblivion. Given his track record, zapping is usually high on the list. You see him stretch, his muscles rippling with cosmic power, a subtle crackle of static electricity already forming around his fingertips. He's like that kid who gets a new toy, or rather, a new problem, and immediately reaches for the biggest, brightest, most powerful tool he has. His lightning bolts, his signature move, his go-to solution for everything from annoying titans to particularly stubborn divine laundry. It's not exactly a nuanced approach, is it? More of a when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail kind of situation, except his hammer is pure, unadulterated electrical fury. He raises his arm, slowly, deliberately. The air around you, which has been heavy and still since the coalescing began, now seems to hum with an expectant energy. You can feel the hairs on your arms stand on end, a subtle tingle that whispers of immense power about to be unleashed. He's not angry, not exactly, more like intensely curious, with a generous helping of divine impatience. He wants answers, and he wants them now. And his preferred method of inquiry involves several million volts. With a swift, decisive flick of his wrist, a bolt of pure, blinding energy streaks from his hand. Crack! It's not the earth-shattering, mountain-splitting kind of lightning you might imagine. Not yet. This is more of a probing, a test. It's like a cosmic finger, poking at the strange, dark mass. You watch, mesmerized, as the brilliant white flash connects with the inky blackness. For a moment, nothing seems to happen. The bolt strikes, illuminates the edges of the mass with a brief, ethereal glow, and then seems to be swallowed whole. It's as if the cloud just absorbed it. Zeus's frown deepens. He's not used to his lightning being so ineffective, or rather, ineffective in the way he expects. He's probably thinking, did it just eat my lightning? That's rude. He tries again. Zap! Another bolt, perhaps a little stronger this time, a little more insistent. This time, you notice a subtle ripple across the surface of the dark mass. It's like a drop of water falling into a puddle of oil, creating a momentary, swirling pattern before settling. Still, no dramatic explosion, No fiery disintegration, just absorption. You might even imagine the cloud letting out a tiny, almost imperceptible burp. This, you realize, is where Zeus's famous recklessness kicks in. He's not a god known for his patience, especially when faced with something that doesn't immediately bend to his will. It's a bit like watching a tech bro try to fix a complex software bug by repeatedly hitting the restart button harder and harder. Eventually, something will happen, but it might not be what you intended. He starts firing bolts in quick succession now, a furious barrage of divine electricity. Crackle, pop, zizzle. The sky is a canvas of flashing light against the deepening black of the anomaly. With each strike, you notice a change. The mass isn't just absorbing the energy, it's retaining it. It's not dispersing, it's concentrating. The edges of the dark mass begin to sharpen, becoming less nebulous, more defined. It starts to swell, subtly at first, then more noticeably, like a balloon being slowly, inexorably inflated. You can almost feel the air growing heavier around you, thick with the scent of ozone. That sharp, clean smell you sometimes get after a thunderstorm, though in this pre-rain world, it's an entirely new sensation, a strange, metallic tang on your tongue. As Zeus continues his electrical probing, you notice tiny, almost imperceptible sparks dancing within the depths of the mass. They flicker like distant fireflies, hinting at the immense energy now churning within. It's becoming less of a mysterious blob and more of a giant, cosmic battery, being charged to an unprecedented capacity. This isn't just random zapping, mind you. There's a method to Zeus's madness, even if it's an unconscious one. He's observing, in his own ham-fisted way, what happens when immense electrical energy is introduced to this strange, new atmospheric phenomenon. It's a bit like early humans, gazing up at the night sky, trying to make sense of the patterns of the stars. Mainstream historical fact alert. Even without telescopes or advanced instruments, ancient astronomers meticulously mapped the movements of celestial bodies, demonstrating a profound, persistent human curiosity to understand and categorize the cosmos. Zeus, in his own rough and tumble fashion, is performing a similar, albeit far more explosive, act of observation and categorization here. He's trying to figure out what this thing is and how it responds. The mass, now visibly larger and darker, begins to pulse with a low, resonant hum that vibrates through your very being. It's not just absorbing, it's actively charging. You can see tendrils of energy, like faint purple veins, snaking through its depths. It's as if the divine ambrosia within is reacting to the electrical current, becoming agitated, excited, almost alive. You might wonder, as a rational observer, why Zeus doesn't just stop. Why keep poking the bear, or in this case, the giant, ominous, electricity-absorbing sky blob? Well, Zeus isn't exactly known for his self-restraint. He's a god of action, of power, and seeing this thing respond to his power, even if not in the way he expects, likely fuels his divine ego. Plus, there's the sheer novelty of it. He's never seen anything like it. Scholarly debate alert. Whether Zeus was driven by pure scientific curiosity in this moment, or merely a divine urge to dominate and understand all new phenomena, remains a topic of spirited academic debate among celestial historians. Some argue he was a nascent empiricist. Others contend he was simply flexing. You can decide for yourself. The air around the charged mass is now thick with a palpable tension. You feel a strange pressure building, as if the very fabric of reality is being stretched taut. The sky above is no longer just blue and dark. It's a canvas of raw, elemental power. You can almost taste the static on your tongue. And then, a truly quirky thing happens. As Zeus unleashes yet another particularly potent bolt, you see, for a fleeting instant, tiny, shimmering, almost ethereal shapes dance just above the swelling dark mass. They're like miniature, ghostly jellyfish, glowing with a faint, otherworldly light, before vanishing as quickly as they appeared. These, you might surmise, are the very first primordial iterations of what we now know as sprites or elves, those brief, high-altitude electrical discharges that occur far above thunderstorms, often too quick and faint for the naked eye to see. A little bonus phenomenon. courtesy of Zeus's overzealous zapping. The dark mass, now truly immense, seems to sigh, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrates through the entire cosmos. It's not a sound of distress, but one of immense fullness, of being stretched to its absolute limit. It's like a balloon that's been inflated far, far beyond its recommended capacity, taut and shimmering, threatening to burst at any moment. Zeus, still oblivious to the precise implications of his actions, simply continues his electrical bombardment. He's like a kid who's discovered that if you keep pressing the button on the toy, it makes a cool noise, without realizing that the toy is now vibrating violently and about to explode. He's just thinking, more lightning, more power. What happens now? And what happens now is not for this section, my dear listener. What happens now is the culmination of all this accidental alchemy and reckless electrical probing. But for this moment, you just witness the colossal, inky mass, shimmering with contained energy, groaning under the weight of Zeus's relentless, accidental charging. The sky is pregnant with possibility and a whole lot of primordial electricity. The air, already thick with the strange, metallic tang of ozone and Zeus's reckless energy, suddenly feels pregnant. You sense a shift, a profound, almost imperceptible giving way in the fabric of the sky above you. It's like the moment before a truly colossal sneeze, when your entire body tenses, anticipating the inevitable expulsion. The dark, nebulous mass, which moments ago absorbed Zeus's electrical probes with an almost hungry silence, now begins to groan. Not a sound you hear with your ears, not yet, but a deep, resonant rumble that vibrates through the very ground beneath your feet, up your legs, and into your chest. It's a sound that suggests immense, unimaginable pressure building, a cosmic sigh before a great release. You crane your neck, shielding your eyes instinctively, though there's no sun to block, just that oppressive, bruised purple ceiling. The mass, once merely dark, now appears to ripple and churn, like a vast, ink-black ocean inverted, its surface boiling with unseen forces. Small, almost imperceptible tremors shake the ground, a prelude to something truly monumental. The air grows heavy, humid, even though the world has never known humidity before. It's a new kind of weight, pressing down, making your lungs feel strangely full, yet somehow starved for the familiar arid air. Then you feel it. A single, cool, almost shockingly cold drop lands on your outstretched hand. It's not a splash, not a trickle, just one isolated, perfectly spherical bead of liquid, startling in its unexpected chill. You stare at it, perplexed. What is this? It's unlike anything you've ever encountered. It rolls across your skin, leaving a brief, shimmering trail before being absorbed by the parched surface, as if the very atoms of your skin are desperate to drink it in. Another drop, then another, and another, a scattering, a tentative, almost shy whisper on the baked earth. Pitter-patter. The sound is alien yet strangely compelling. It's a delicate, rhythmic tapping, like tiny invisible fingers drumming on every surface. You look around, and you see others, the nascent creatures of this young world, also pausing, their heads cocked, their senses overwhelmed by this novel sensation. A small, scuttling beetle freezes mid-stride, one tiny antenna quivering as a drop lands squarely on its carapace. It doesn't seem to know whether to flee or investigate. The pitter-patter grows bolder, more confident. Now it's a light drizzle, a fine, misty veil descending upon the land. You feel it on your face, 1,000 tiny, cool kisses. The air, which was once so still and dry, now dances with microscopic particles of this new liquid. It's refreshing, invigorating, yet also a little disorienting. Your vision blurs slightly as the fine mist coats your eyelashes. The ground, which was a uniform, cracked brown, begins to show a dappled pattern of darker, wet patches. It's as if the very earth is blushing, absorbing this strange, cool caress. And then, without warning, the sky truly opens. It's not just a shower, not merely rain. It is the deluge. The first, the primordial, the absolute downpour. The sky doesn't just weep, it weeps. A roaring, thundering cascade of water erupts from the dark mass above, as if a colossal dam has burst in the heavens. The gentle pitter-patter transforms instantly into a deafening drum roll, then a sustained, overwhelming roar. It's a sound that swallows all others, a primal symphony of falling water. You can't hear yourself think, can barely hear the astonished cries of the few creatures brave enough to remain exposed. The world instantly becomes a blur of streaks and sheets of liquid. You are instantly, utterly drenched. The weight of the water is immense, pressing down on your shoulders, plastering your hair to your face. Pours over you, cascades around you, washing over every inch of your being. It's cold, yes, but not painfully so. Rather, it's a profound, cleansing chill that seems to penetrate to your very core. You instinctively close your eyes against the onslaught, but even through your eyelids, you perceive the overwhelming rush of it all. When you dare to open them again, the world has transformed. The ground, moments ago parched and dusty, is now a slick, glistening surface. Rivulets form instantly, snaking across the contours of the land, carving tiny, ephemeral channels. These rivulets merge into streams, which swell into torrents, rushing down any incline, carrying away loose dust and pebbles. The very air is thick with the smell of it, a rich, earthy, incredibly potent aroma. This is petrichor, the unique scent of rain on dry soil, though no one has a name for it yet. It's a smell that speaks of life, of awakening, of a profound connection between the sky and the earth. Scientists wouldn't truly understand the specific compounds responsible for this phenomenon like geosmin until the 1960s, but here, in this nascent world, it's just a raw, intoxicating olfactory experience. The plants, which have endured eons of relentless sun, seem to gasp. Their leaves, once brittle and dusty, now glisten, their colors deepening to verdant hues you never knew existed. You can almost feel them drinking, their roots reaching greedily into the suddenly saturated earth. A small, withered sapling, barely clinging to life, seems to visibly plump up, its tiny buds swelling with newfound vitality. It's an instant, miraculous transformation. The animals, too, react in a myriad of ways. Some, overwhelmed by the sheer force and novelty of it, scurry for the meager shelter offered by shallow caves or overhangs. Others, more curious or perhaps instinctively drawn to the life-giving liquid, extend their tongues, sampling the strange, clean taste. A pack of proto-wolves, accustomed to panting under the scorching sun, initially cower, their fur plastered to their bodies. But then one, bolder than the rest, lowers its head to a newly formed puddle and drinks deeply. Its eyes widen, and a low, satisfied growl rumbles in its chest. Soon others follow, abandoning their fear for the sheer, unadulterated pleasure of quenching an eons-old thirst. To this day, scholars debate whether the very first creatures to feel those drops experienced pure terror or a primal, unexplainable sense of relief. The rain continues its glorious, relentless assault. It hammers down, a ceaseless, powerful force that reshapes the immediate landscape. Small depressions fill with water, becoming temporary pools. The world, once a study in browns and ochres, now shimmers with reflections of the dark, weeping sky. Every surface is polished clean, every dust mote's washed away. The air, though still heavy with moisture, feels incredibly fresh, scrubbed clean by this cosmic shower. And Zeus? Oh Zeus, you can almost feel his utter bewilderment, his sudden, profound shock. He didn't will this. He merely prodded, poked, and accidentally overcharged. Now, the magnificent, terrifying result of his cosmic clumsiness is cascading over his entire world. He stands or floats, or perhaps even stumbles, utterly drenched, his divine hair plastered to his face, his mighty robes heavy with water. He looks less like the king of the gods and more like a toddler who's accidentally turned on a fire hose in the living room. There's no grand pronouncement, no triumphant cry, just a silent, wide-eyed astonishment. He is the unwitting architect of the world's first bath, and he appears to have forgotten his towel. It's a bit like when you try to fix a leaky faucet and end up flooding the entire kitchen, but on a god-sized scale. The deluge shows no sign of stopping. It's an endless, exhilarating, slightly terrifying torrent. The sound is a constant roar, a white noise that fills the universe. The air is cool, the ground is soft, and every living thing is undergoing a baptism by water. It's not just hydration. It's a recalibration, a complete reset for a world that has only ever known thirst. For eons, the world was a parched canvas. Now it is being painted anew, stroke by magnificent watery stroke. And you, standing there, soaked to the bone, can only marvel at the raw, untamed power of this utterly unprecedented event. No one had ever needed an umbrella before, or even conceived of such a thing, because the concept of falling water from the sky simply didn't exist. Now, the very idea of shelter from this benevolent onslaught is slowly, unconsciously being born. You stand there, a silent, celestial observer, as the world finally drinks. The cacophony of the downpour has softened to a contented gurgle, a symphony of trickling streams and thirsty soil. The air, once thick with the scent of sun-baked dust, now hums with the rich, earthy perfume of wet ground, a scent so primal and satisfying it makes your very essence sigh with relief. You feel the cool, damp breeze on your immortal skin, a sensation entirely new, entirely refreshing. The parched cracks in the earth, which moments ago seemed like ancient, irreparable scars, are now softening, swelling, visibly rehydrating as you watch. It's like witnessing a giant, weary beast finally taking a long, deep drink after an eternity of thirst. And Zeus, oh Zeus, he's not just watching, he's feeling it. He feels the resonance of the refreshed earth, a deep, vibrational hum reaching up to him, a chorus of silent gratitude. The initial shock of the sudden deluge, that moment of pure, unadulterated surprise as the sky just opened, is now giving way to a different kind of awe. His golden eyes, usually alight with mischievous energy or the stern glow of command, are wide, reflecting the shimmering puddles that dot the nascent landscape. You can almost see the gears turning in his divine mind, whirring slowly at first, then picking up speed. It's the look of a deity who's just accidentally invented sliced bread, but for an entire planet, and he's only just starting to connect the dots between the flour, the yeast, and this glorious, fluffy carbohydrate. He looks from the glistening, reborn earth to his own outstretched hand, still tingling with the residual energy of the lightning bolt he'd so impulsively flung. Then his gaze drifts skyward, to where the last wisps of that immense, dark mass are dissipating, dissolving into the now clear, luminous blue. You can practically hear his internal monologue, a divine detective piecing together a cosmic whodunit, where he is both the perpetrator and the bewildered witness. Wait a minute, you imagine him thinking. That dark thing, it wasn't always there, and that lightning, it hit that. His mind, a canvas of infinite memory, begins to replay the events in reverse, then forward again, like a celestial DVR. First, there was the chalice. The chalice, the source of all his frustration, his desperate attempts to concoct a liquid solution for the world's thirst. He remembers the rich, potent ambrosia, shimmering with divine light, almost too vibrant to contain. And then, the clumsy moment, the overfilled chalice, the precious liquid sloshing over the brim, cascading down, not onto the earth as he'd intended, but spilling into the very air around him. What a mess, he'd thought at the time, a waste of perfectly good divine nectar. Then he remembers the weird energy, the way the residual essence from the spilled ambrosia didn't just vanish but seemed to hang in the air, coalescing, gathering. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like a faint shimmer on a hot day. But it grew. Slowly, steadily, it began to accumulate, drawing in the very essence of the celestial atmosphere, thickening, darkening. It was like watching a particularly slow-motion artistic performance where the artist is just throwing random colors onto a canvas, and somehow it's starting to look intentional. This gathering, this cosmic residue, was the first hint of something entirely new forming in the air. And then the mass itself, that nebulous, dark anomaly that had hung in the sky, a strange, unprecedented blot on the otherwise clear firmament. It was foreboding, yes, but also utterly fascinating. He'd never seen anything like it. It wasn't a cloud in the way you might imagine a cloud today, fluffy, white, ephemeral. No, this was a thing, a heavy, pregnant presence that seemed to absorb the very light around it. You can almost hear him mumbling. It was different, not like the wisps I used to see from the primordial mists. This was dense. And then his own intervention, his lightning bolts, his attempts to probe, to understand, to perhaps even dispel this strange phenomenon that had intruded upon his otherwise perfectly ordered, if parched, domain. He had merely intended to investigate, to give it a little zap, a divine nudge to see what it was made of. A scientific experiment, if you will, but conducted with all the precision of a toddler with a hammer. And in that moment, as the electrical charge coursed through the dark mass, he felt a sudden, profound shift, a tension, a building pressure, like a divine balloon being overinflated. And then, the release, the deluge, the realization dawns on him like the first rays of a new dawn across a refreshed world. It wasn't just a random act of nature or a new, spontaneous phenomenon. It was his doing, his clumsy spill, the gathering of the divine essence, the formation of the heavy mass, and then his own electrical probing each step, an unwitting ingredient in a celestial recipe for hydration. He hadn't just wished for water. He had accidentally engineered its delivery system. It's a bit like how some historians still argue whether the invention of the printing press was primarily driven by a desire to disseminate religious texts or simply a more efficient way to produce playing cards. Sometimes, the grandest innovations have the most mundane or accidental origins. You can almost see the gears in his mind clicking into place, the divine equivalent of a eureka moment, though perhaps less a shout of triumph and more a quiet, astonished murmur. He begins to understand the delicate balance. The divine liquid, the atmospheric conditions, the electrical charge. It's not just water. It's charged water, water born from the very essence of the gods themselves, delivered by the sky. He realizes that the very act of overfilling the chalice, which he'd seen as a mistake, was the essential first domino. Without that initial, seemingly insignificant spillage, none of this would have happened. It's a profound lesson in the butterfly effect, but on a cosmic scale where the butterfly is a clumsy god and the hurricane is a world-changing downpour. He considers the implications. If the divine essence could coalesce like that, and if his lightning could trigger its release, then perhaps this wasn't just a one-off accident. Perhaps it was a process, a repeatable process. You can see the gleam of dawning power in his eyes, not just the power to command, but the power to create a fundamental element of the world. It's a bit like how Benjamin Franklin, through his famous kite experiment, demonstrated the electrical nature of lightning, an observation that, while dangerous, was a crucial step in understanding atmospheric electricity. Zeus, in his own way, has just conducted the first, albeit accidental, meteorological experiment. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the damp, vital air. The world is coming alive around him. Tiny shoots, dormant for ages, are already unfurling. The dry riverbeds are starting to trickle. The parched leaves of ancient trees are perking up, shedding their dust-laden dormancy. It's a miracle, and he was its unwitting architect. It's a peculiar feeling, this mix of divine pride and utter bewilderment. He's like a chef who accidentally dropped a spice into a dish, and it turned out to be the most delicious thing ever, and now he has to figure out what it was and how to do it again. Except, with the fate of an entire planet at stake. The understanding deepens. He sees the cycle already beginning to form in his mind's eye. Evaporation of the new moisture, the potential for new divine essence to gather, the need for another electrical charge. It's a beautiful, intricate dance, born from a simple spill. He's not just the king of the gods. He's now, inadvertently, the master of the sky's tears, the celestial tears that bring life. It's a responsibility, yes, but also a profound new capability. He's just discovered a whole new department of divine management, one he never knew he needed, and you can almost hear him mutter, with a touch of his characteristic sarcasm, "Well, that was unexpected. Next time, I should probably just use a bigger chalice." It's a quirky tidbit of cosmic history, truly, that the very first rain cloud was essentially a divine spill, a celestial oopsie that blossomed into life. You stand there, a silent witness, as the world breathes a collective sigh of relief, soaking in the unprecedented deluge. The air hums with a freshness you've never known, a clean, earthy scent that clings to everything, a stark contrast to the parched dust of moments before. The very ground seems to sigh, drinking deeply, greedily, as if it had been holding its breath for eons. And in the midst of this cosmic shower, Zeus, still dripping, still blinking, finds himself facing a brand new problem. It's a bit like when you accidentally create a new app feature that goes viral, and suddenly everyone's asking what it's called. You know, the kind of moment where you just want to take a nap, but the world demands a branding strategy. The initial shock of the downpour gives way to a profound sense of awe, not just for the mortals below, but for the gods themselves. Hera, her divine robes now thoroughly soaked but her expression one of pure, unadulterated relief, looks at Zeus with a gaze that is less accusatory and more curious. "What?" she begins, her voice softer than you've ever heard it, almost a whisper against the drumming of water. "Do we call this thing?" And that, dear listener, is where the real fun begins. Because you can't just have a world-altering phenomenon without a name. Can you? Imagine trying to explain to someone, "Oh yes, that wet stuff that falls from the sky sometimes, the one that makes the plants green. It just doesn't have the right cosmic gravitas." So you can almost picture it. An impromptu divine summit, probably held right there amidst the puddles, with Zeus still looking a bit sheepish, like a toddler who's just spilled a gallon of juice but somehow made the floor smell amazing. The brainstorming began, as you might expect, with a bit of divine chaos. Suggestions flew like stray lightning bolts. Some gods, ever practical, proposed names that simply described its function: Skyquench, Earthdrinker, or the rather uninspired Wetness. Others, more poetic, leaned towards grander, more abstract concepts. Aphrodite, ever the romantic, suggested Heaven's Tears of Joy, which, while beautiful, was deemed a tad too long for everyday use. Hephaestus, ever the pragmatist, probably grumbled something about Water Delivery System 1.0, but no one was really listening to him. Zeus, still reeling from his accidental invention, found himself in an unfamiliar position. Not dictating, but deliberating. He paced, or rather, floated a few inches above the now soggy ground, his brow furrowed in thought. He remembered the feeling of that divine ambrosia, the potent liquid, the spill, and the subsequent, inexplicable gathering of energy. He thought of the sky, once a vast, empty canvas, now a source of this incredible bounty. It wasn't just water. It was life. It was a gift, albeit an accidental one, from the heavens themselves. And here's where a quirky tidbit comes in, something you might not find in your standard mythological texts. It's said that for a brief, bewildering moment, Zeus considered naming it after himself. Can you imagine? "Oh, look, it's Zeus drops again." Or, "We're expecting heavy Zeus showers today." The other gods, for once, united in a chorus of resounding no's. Even Zeus had to admit it lacked a certain humility. Besides, Hera would never let him live it down. "You accidentally created it, dear. Let's not get too big for your britches, or your cloud, as it were." The discussion continued for what felt like eons, though in truth, it was probably only a few hours of intense divine deliberation, which, in God time, is practically a blink. The very act of naming, you see, is incredibly powerful. It transforms the unknown into the known, the chaotic into the comprehensible. Think about how early human civilizations, as a mainstream historical fact, often attributed divine or magical properties to natural phenomena before they understood their scientific basis. Naming something gave it an identity, a place in the cosmic order, and often a deity to be appeased or celebrated. Without a name, this glorious downpour was just a wet event. With a name, it could become a recurring miracle, a part of the world's very fabric. The gods debated the essence of the phenomenon. Was it a gift? A release? A consequence? They considered words that spoke of the sky, of the heavens, of the liquid itself. They thought of its effect on the parched earth, the way it quenched thirst and brought forth new life. And then, as if an idea had coalesced from the very mists rising from the newly hydrated soil, a suggestion emerged. Some say it was Hermes, ever quick-witted, who first uttered it. Others claim it was Athena, wise and insightful. But the general consensus among ancient scribes, though historians still argue whether this particular detail was added by a later, particularly dramatic poet, is that it was a collective flash of divine inspiration. They looked at the sky, still weeping its bounty, and they thought of the sky's benevolence, its unexpected generosity. They thought of the way the water seemed to fall like tears, but tears of pure, unadulterated blessing. And so, the name came forth, resonating with simplicity and profound truth. Rain. Yes, just rain. But the simplicity belied its immense power. It wasn't just a sound, it was a concept, an identity. It was a word that encapsulated the heavenly tears, the sky's release, the earth's hydration. It was short, easy to say, and held within it the promise of life. It was a name that transcended the initial accident and elevated the phenomenon to something purposeful and good. And as the word was spoken, you could almost feel a shift in the very fabric of reality. The wet stuff became rain. The sky's weeping became rain. The great quenching became rain. It was no longer just an event. It was a thing. It had an identity. It had a purpose. It had a name. This naming wasn't just a linguistic exercise, you understand. It fundamentally changed how the world experienced hydration. Before, thirst was an enemy, a constant, nagging presence, combated only by seeking out scarce springs or rivers. Water was a finite resource, something to be guarded and hoarded. But now, with the concept of rain, hydration became something that could fall from the sky. It was a gift, a recurring blessing. It shifted from being a struggle for survival to an expectation, a cycle. Imagine trying to explain the concept of Monday without a word for it. It would just be the day after the 2 days you don't work, before the day you really don't want to work. Clunky, right? Naming rain made it real, discussable, predictable. It allowed mortals to anticipate it, to pray for it, to thank the heavens for it. The very word carried the promise of life, the scent of damp earth, the sound of gentle drumming on leaves. It transformed the terrifying unknown into a familiar, life-giving friend. And just like that, the world was forever changed, simply by giving a name to the sky's newfound generosity. You stand there, a silent witness, as the world, previously a canvas of ochre and rust, drinks deeply. It's not just absorbing the water, it's guzzling it, almost audibly. The parched earth, cracked and yearning, practically sighs in relief. You feel the very ground beneath your feet softening, becoming pliable, almost spongy. The air, which moments ago was thick with the scent of dust and desperation, now carries an entirely new perfume. The rich, earthy aroma of petrichor, that distinct, almost intoxicating scent of rain hitting dry ground. It's like the planet just took a long, hot shower after a millennia-long hike. And honestly, you can almost hear it go, "Ah, that's the good stuff." And then, as you watch, something truly astonishing begins to happen. It's not a slow, gradual awakening, like a spring morning unfolding over weeks. Oh no, this is a speed run, a time-lapse compressed into real time, a botanical explosion so rapid it almost feels like a visual trick. Tiny, dormant seeds, buried for eons, stirred by the unprecedented moisture, decide this is their moment. You literally see them swell, then burst, pushing intrepid little green shoots up through the newly softened soil. It's as if the earth itself is exhaling a vibrant, verdant breath it had been holding for an eternity. First, it's just a faint fuzz of green, like a delicate moss spreading across the once barren plains. But within what feels like mere moments, that fuzz thickens, elongates, and transforms into a riot of emerald blades. Grasses, tall and swaying, emerge from nowhere, carpeting the landscape in a plush, living rug. You can almost hear the tiny pop as each blade unfurls, reaching for the newly diffused sunlight filtering through the lingering, ethereal mist. It's like the land just decided to change into its best outfit, and it's definitely a floral print. Then come the flowers. Not just a few scattered here and there, but an absolute explosion of color. Crimson poppies unfurl their delicate petals, sapphire irises stand tall and proud, and golden buttercups gleam like scattered jewels across the burgeoning meadows. The air fills with the sweet, heady scent of newly bloomed blossoms, a symphony of fragrances that makes your nose tingle with delight. Bees, emerging from their dusty hideaways, buzz with newfound purpose, darting from bloom to bloom, almost giddy with the sudden abundance. It's a full-blown botanical rave, and everyone's invited. Trees, which had stood as gnarled, skeletal sentinels against the harsh sun, suddenly seem to remember their purpose. Their branches, long devoid of life, sprout tiny, tentative buds that rapidly unfurl into vibrant green leaves. You can practically hear the sap rushing through their veins, a life-giving current transforming their desiccated forms into majestic, leafy giants. Forests begin to appear where only scrubland existed, their canopies quickly interweaving to form cool, shaded havens. It's a transformation so complete, you might wonder if you've accidentally slipped into another dimension where everything is just greener. And it's not just the plants. The animal kingdom, too, responds with an almost primal joy. Creatures that had adapted to the arid existence, surviving on dewdrops and the barest whispers of moisture, now revel in the abundance. Herds of antelope, once lean and cautious, drink deeply from newly formed puddles, their sleek coats gleaming under the softened sun. Birds, whose songs had been muted by the dryness, now burst into jubilant choruses, their feathers vibrant against the new green backdrop. You see small, furry creatures darting through the tall grasses, their eyes wide with wonder, perhaps even a hint of confusion. Wait, they seem to chirp. You mean we don't have to ration our sips anymore? This is just here. Rivers, which had been reduced to trickles or completely evaporated, now swell with life-giving water, carving new paths through the transformed landscape. Lakes, once just dusty depressions, fill to the brim, their surfaces reflecting the newly vibrant sky. Fish, miraculously surviving in stagnant pools, now find vast new territories to explore, their scales shimmering as they dart through the clear, cool depths. Frogs, with their surprisingly deep voices, begin their ancient, rhythmic croaking, a nightly serenade to the newfound aquatic abundance. It's a watery renaissance, a liquid symphony playing out across the entire world. This explosion of life is so profound, so immediate, that it fundamentally reshapes the world's very identity. The land, which had been defined by its scarcity, by its struggle, is now characterized by its lushness, its generosity. It's as if the entire planet just exhaled a collective sigh of relief, then started to hum with a quiet, contented joy. The air itself feels different, heavier, sweeter, imbued with the scent of damp earth and burgeoning life. You feel a new coolness, a gentle humidity that caresses your skin, a stark contrast to the biting, dry winds of yesteryears. You observe the subtle ways the world expresses its gratitude. It's not a verbal thanks, of course, but a vibrant, living testament. Every unfurling leaf, every blossoming flower, every gurgling stream is a silent hymn of appreciation. The very vibrancy of the colors, the richness of the soil, the teeming life within the newly formed forests, it all speaks of a deep, abiding thankfulness for the sky's unexpected generosity. It's a gratitude so profound it manifests as pure, unadulterated growth. You might even find yourself wondering if the plants are secretly sending little thank you notes up to Zeus, perhaps written on dew-kissed petals. This sudden abundance also begins to shape the future in ways no one, not even Zeus, could have predicted. The availability of water and fertile land means that life can now settle, can thrive in one place. This is a critical turning point, leading eventually to the development of agriculture, a concept utterly alien in the dry, nomadic world that existed before. Historians still argue whether the invention of the plow or the discovery of consistent rainfall was the more significant catalyst for early human civilization, but you can see how one naturally flows from the other. Without this accidental deluge, the very idea of a settled village, let alone a city, would have been impossible. You can almost imagine the first ancient farmer, scratching his head, looking at a field of suddenly sprouting grain and thinking, well, that wasn't there yesterday. Guess I'll just plant more. And here's a quirky little tidbit for you. Did you know that some ancient cultures, particularly those in naturally arid regions, would sometimes perform rituals where they would throw water into the air to encourage rain? It's almost like they were instinctively mimicking Zeus's accidental spill, just thousands of years later and with far less divine power. Talk about a cosmic echo. It just goes to show you, sometimes the best inventions are born from utter chaos, and sometimes humanity just figures out how to copy it later, usually with less dramatic lightning. The transformation is complete, pervasive. The world you now perceive is utterly reborn. Where once there was a stark, almost monochromatic landscape, now there is an endless tapestry of greens, blues, and every color of the rainbow. The silence of the parched land has been replaced by the symphony of life, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of insects, the babbling of brooks. It's a testament to the power of water and to the accidental genius of a young god who, in a moment of frustration and clumsiness, utterly reshaped the destiny of a planet. You feel the profound quietness of this new, vibrant world settling over you, a gentle hum of growth and gratitude. And just like that, you realize the cosmos had its first proper shower. From an accidental spill, a moment of pure divine clumsiness that would make even the most butter-fingered barista blush, Zeus became the unwitting architect of rain. Think about it. One moment, an eternally parched world, yearning for moisture. The next, a celestial downpour, utterly unplanned, undeniably magnificent. It's almost like he stumbled upon the ultimate hydration hack, right? Forget your fancy irrigation systems. This was the original cosmic version, delivered straight from the heavens by a god who probably just wanted to clean up a mess. You picture him, Zeus, standing there, perhaps still wiping ambrosia from his toga, looking up at the sky in bewildered awe as the first drops descended. He hadn't intended to create a meteorological marvel. He'd simply been trying to solve a problem with a potent, divine liquid, and in his frustration, he'd spilled it. The sheer irony isn't lost on you, is it? The king of the gods, master of thunder and lightning, who would later wield rain as a tool of divine will, began his reign as a weather god with an epic oops. It's almost endearing, in a powerful, world-altering kind of way. This wasn't a grand design, a meticulously engineered solution to the world's thirst. No, this was pure, unadulterated serendipity, a cosmic happy accident that fundamentally reshaped the planet's destiny. Before this, you remember, the world was a study in monochromatic dryness. Ochre, dusty browns, the bleached bones of ancient landscapes. Now, you see the subtle, then dramatic shift. The earth, which had been so desperately thirsty, drank deeply, greedily, like a parched traveler finding an oasis. You can almost hear the soft, sighing sound of the soil absorbing the water, a whisper of relief echoing across the nascent continents. The initial torrent might have been chaotic, overwhelming, but it was also profoundly nourishing. The very essence of the divine, albeit diluted by atmospheric processes, was now seeping into the planet's core, invigorating it with a life force it had never known. And the transformation, it was immediate and breathtaking. You watch as the dull, cracked surfaces of the land begin to soften, to darken with moisture. Tiny, dormant seeds, waiting for an eternity beneath the sun-baked crust, suddenly stirred. You can practically feel the latent energy, the pent-up potential, bursting forth. Within what felt like mere moments, though it was likely still a stretch of time for the young world, a verdant carpet began to unfurl. Sparse, hardy shrubs became lush. Patches of what was once barren rock started to host tenacious mosses. Rivers, which had been mere trickles or entirely dry beds, swelled with newfound vigor, carving fresh paths through the landscape, carrying life-giving water to distant reaches. The world, once a muted palette, exploded into a riot of greens. Emerald, jade, chartreuse, olive. Flowers, in hues previously unimaginable, unfurled their petals to the sun, their scents mingling with the incredible, earthy perfume of petrichor, that unique aroma of rain on dry ground. Historians still debate the precise origin of the term petrichor, but you can bet it became a defining aroma after Zeus's little spill, a signature scent of a world reborn. Zeus, in turn, began to understand the profound implications of his accidental invention. He didn't just create a downpour, he initiated a cycle. He saw the water evaporate, forming new, albeit smaller, clouds. He observed these clouds drift, coalesce, and then, with a little nudge from his residual lightning energy, release their contents once more. It was a self-sustaining system, a perpetual motion machine of hydration. This realization, you imagine, must have been a revelation. From being the king of a static, arid realm, he had inadvertently become the custodian of a dynamic, life-giving one. He went from being a cosmic firefighter, trying to douse a thirst with direct pours of ambrosia, to the manager of the world's most efficient natural irrigation system. He probably started taking credit for every drizzle, too. You know how these powerful types are. Yes, another glorious rain. You're welcome, mortals. All part of the plan, naturally. The concept of a water cycle, something you learn about in elementary school science, was born from this singular event. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, these fundamental processes of Earth's climate system owe their very existence, in this mythological telling, to a god's clumsy moment. You see the clouds, now familiar sights in the sky, as direct descendants of that first nebulous, dark anomaly. Every raindrop that falls, every river that flows, every plant that thrives, traces its lineage back to that overflowing chalice. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? That such immense, foundational change could spring from something so utterly unplanned. The planet's destiny was irrevocably altered. Without rain, complex ecosystems couldn't flourish. Imagine a world without forests, without vast oceans replenished by rainfall, without the intricate web of life that relies on fresh water. Ancient civilizations like those along the Nile or the Tigris and Euphrates rose and fell with the rhythms of water. Without rain, none of that would have been possible. There would be no agriculture, no settled communities, no grand cities. Humanity, if it even existed in such a parched landscape, would be nomadic, perpetually searching for scarce, isolated springs, never able to put down roots. The very foundation of civilization, of culture, of human history as you understand it, rests upon the consistent, life-giving flow of water, a flow initiated by Zeus's unintentional act. Think about the sheer diversity of life that blossomed. The cool, damp undergrowth of a forest, teeming with hidden creatures. The vibrant hues of a tropical rainforest, where life bursts forth in every conceivable form. The gentle lapping of waves on a freshwater lake. All of it a direct consequence of that first glorious deluge. It's a testament to the power of unintended consequences. A cosmic butterfly effect where a spilled drink leads to a flourishing planet. And the quirky tidbit? Did you know there's an old belief in some cultures that rain is the tears of gods or spirits, mourning or blessing the earth? Pretty fitting, wouldn't you say, given our story of Zeus's initial frustration and then his unwitting creation? It lends a beautiful melancholic poetry to every downpour, a divine connection to the very moisture that sustains us. Philosophers have long pondered whether true innovation comes from deliberate genius or serendipitous accident. Our story of Zeus certainly leans heavily on the latter, leaving many to wonder if true progress is more about happy accidents than grand designs. So, you see, Zeus's legacy isn't just about his thunderbolts or his divine authority. It's about the profound, accidental gift he bestowed upon the world. He became the unwitting architect of rain, the accidental inventor of the cloud. Every time you feel a cool drop on your skin, or watch the world come alive after a storm, you are witnessing the ongoing legacy of that single momentous spill. It's a reminder that even in the grandest cosmic narratives, sometimes the greatest changes come from the most unexpected and delightfully clumsy beginnings. As the echoes of Zeus's accidental invention settle into the quiet corners of your mind, you feel a gentle calm descending. The story of how the world learned to drink, how the sky learned to weep life, now drifts softly, like a cloud on a summer breeze. You can almost feel the gentle patter of those first, ancient raindrops, soothing the parched earth, bringing forth the vibrant green that now blankets your world. Allow the images to soften, the edges of the tale to blur into a comforting haze. The vast cosmos, once dry and yearning, now breathes with the rhythm of water, a cycle of life that began with a mere oversight. There's a quiet wonder in knowing that even the grandest transformations can stem from such unassuming moments, a reminder that beauty and new beginnings are often found in the most unexpected places. Let the sound of the rain, real or imagined, lull you into a deeper sense of peace, a gentle whisper of the world's enduring story. Your mind, now watered with tales, can rest, knowing that even accidental spills can lead to the most magnificent creations.